If you watch Dirt Vision at Jackson Motorplex and Houston Speedway, you might recognize this guy's voice. We're going to be getting up to speed with Austin Lloyd, talking about his illustrious career in the Midwest, what's the new plans moving forward after 2023, as well as what does Austin do when he's not announcing races. That's coming up next on Getting Up to Speed after these messages. Dave's Home Supply specializes in cabinets, flooring, and countertops. Visit their website at daveshomesupply.com to look at products, services, financing, and even a free estimate. Are you looking for bookkeeping, payroll, or income tax services? Then check out the folks at For You Simple Bookkeeping. They are a licensed tax preparer throughout the entire United States. For more information, click on the link in the description. This broadcast is brought to you by Meat Freaks Jerky Club. Get the best jerky the world has to offer straight to your door by visiting meatfreaksjerkyclub.com. Pick your box and plan, tell them where to ship, and receive and enjoy. Log on to meatfreaksjerky.com and use promo code SPEED. Well, joining me on the phone, it's Austin Lloyd, and Austin is the lead commentator at Jackson Motorplex in Minnesota, and he is the pit reporter at Houston Speedway in South Dakota. Austin, it's great to have you on board for this interview. You had a great weekend at the Jackson Nationals last weekend with the World of Outlaws in town.
Yeah, it's always a lot of fun at Jackson Nationals. It's the 45th running of the event, the AGCO Jackson Nationals, powered by Fent. We had really an incredible last 4 laps of that feature, we'll say, after a late race restart. James McFadden was a part of that. Carson Macedo ended up picking up the win. Brad Sweet and Macedo battled for the last couple of laps. A lot of fun. Jackson Nationals is a special event for those of you who aren't in the upper Midwest. It's really a small town gathering, a celebration of racing in Jackson, and I love being a part of it.
Oh, it was an incredible finish. I mean, it was James McFadden's weekend. He won both prelim nights, and he looked like he was just going to sweep the weekend, which was going to be an incredible feat in itself. And then, things happen, and things changed there in the last little bit.
Yeah, and that's sprint car racing, right? That's why we love it so much. These races are decided based off of what happens on restarts and what happens in traffic. And James had been really, really fast all week, but unfortunately, I think missed the bottom a little bit one time in turn number 2, and that allowed Macedo to get by. And then on that late race restart, like we mentioned, Macedo and Sweet just went at each other. I think in the last 5 laps they changed the lead 3 or 4 different times.
It was a great way to conclude a great weekend, and man, to be a part of that, and working with Johnny Gibson had to just be a complete delight and treat just to see such a stunning conclusion to a wonderful weekend.
Yeah, and I love working with John. The first time he brought me in to announce the Outlaw race with him was in, I believe, 2018, and I've been announcing Jackson Nationals ever since 2018. And for whatever reason, right from the first time, John and I have always worked extremely well together. It's always been really smooth, really natural. And it's just, it's a joy to work with John Gibson. He's the best announcer, in my opinion, in the history of sprint car racing, coast to coast. And to be able to work alongside him is always a treat.
Now, for you personally, what kind of got your interest going in the first place to get into announcing?
Yeah, let me go back in time here. In 2014, I took a position kind of being, intern type, do-it-all guy working at Park Jefferson Speedway in Sioux City, Iowa, or just north of Sioux City, Iowa, to reopen that racetrack. And at that point, the general manager who was hired was Josh Holt of My Race Pack. So,
okay.
Funny how things come together there, right?
Exactly.
But,
small circle.
Absolutely. In that off season, my 2 things happened to me in my life. My son was born in March, but just before that, on the last day of January, my dad died. So because my son was born, I had to get like a real job with health insurance and take life seriously and kind of grow up a little bit. Mm-hmm. But when my dad died, my dad had always said, that's something that you should do. You should announce these races. You should do that. You should really look into it. Because, in our area, we've been blessed with, voices like Tony Bachhoven and Mark Tassler and Sean Neisted. And Dad always said that was what I should do. So I guess when he passed, it was kind of the last kick of motivation that I needed to finally say, all right, I'm going to quit working at the racetrack every day, but I want to come back and be the announcer. And so I tried my hand at that, and they hired me at Park Jefferson in 2015. And then the last night of that season, I filled in at Nobles County Speedway in Worthington, Minnesota for a big modified race that they were having. And it just so happened some way, somehow, Doug Johnson heard me doing that. I don't know if he was there or heard it online or whatever. But the next year he called me and said, come, work at Jackson. Todd had Jackson for 1 year at that point. They were looking for a solution for the announcer. And it just everything kind of aligned for that to be me. And so since 2016, I've been working at Jackson Motorplex.
That's super cool. And then when did things happen with Huset's? When did that move start happening?
Well, we almost have COVID to thank for it. I hate to say it that way.
Yeah.
But in 2020, we ran a couple of those no fans races the year of COVID. We ran an unsanctioned sprint car race that I announced with Chet Christner. And then we ran a World of Outlaw late model race with no fans there at Jackson that I announced with Rick Eshelman.
Okay.
And then the state of Minnesota said, all right, you're not going to have fans back. And Todd said, okay, I'm tired of losing money. And he had always kicked around the idea of buying Huset's, but it never really came together. But I guess that was the motivation that, both sides needed to finally close that deal of Todd buying Huset's Speedway in Brandon, South Dakota. And when that happened, Sean Neisted had been the announcer there. I believe up until last week, Tuesday, he had announced every 410 race that had happened at Houston since 2007. Okay. And so he was the natural fit to come back and be the announcer at Houston Speedway when it reopened. And I transitioned to a role doing pit reporting there at Houston. And so it's worked really well. Sean Neisted's a guy that I've known for a long time. Kind of modeled myself after when I started announcing. So it was cool to see Sean on a personal level for me go from, somebody I wanted to be like, to somebody that I worked with, and then over the last 3 years become a really good personal friend of mine. And he and I have always worked together extremely well from the beginning. It was always very fluid with Sean and I as well. And I hate to say it this way, but I really think at Houston Speedway every Sunday, Sean and I put out what is probably the best tandem track series sanction whatever that exists in sprint car racing. I wouldn't put anyone else ahead of the product that we put out together on Dirt Vision every Sunday night.
Well, and you guys do more than just feed off of each other. You guys have a pre-race show every single Sunday before the race, which is super cool. And you guys got a really good flow and a really good rhythm together.
Yeah, we've been able to kind of experiment a little bit, and a lot of that's been the backing of Dirt Vision, right? I mean, Dirt Vision came along, and they've encouraged us to, hey, we've been trying to do this studio thing for a while with Dave Reef, but I think you and Sean have the ability to do that just fine. And, and that we got a local bar, Tailgaters, in town where we're from, that signed up to have us there, and and I think that quality's been exemplified as well. It's not just me tooting our own horn over here. I mean, there's a reason why he was invited to go do the King's Royal. Yeah. There was a reason why I was invited to do infield at Knoxville Nationals last year, even though I wasn't able to attend. We've been able to push each other a little bit, doing a pre-race show at Tailgaters, going back and forth before the races as well, before hot laps, things like that. Just things that, frankly, nobody else in the country really does.
Well, and hopefully it's a motivation factor for some people to, just to put it bluntly, up their game a little bit, to add that extra little bit that, perhaps dirt sprint car racing needs, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really good young voices in the media side of this right now. And I think that trend kind of started with Blake Anderson when he kind of got the All-Stars job. I don't want to say he was an unknown quantity at that point, but, he was a young guy moving into a role that, most people probably didn't expect for him at that point. And so he started that trend of young guys getting into the announcing side of the sport. And, I in 2016 became a part of that, and, happy to carry, but I mean, we saw that like in Pennsylvania, Earl Hoon Jr. getting started over there at Port.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I know Bruce Ellis quit at Williams Grove, and they've got another young guy over there kind of getting started there too. So really cool to see that trend continue, because frankly, there's not a lot of chairs in this side of the sport that are available. And so to kind of get some fresh new faces in there sometimes is nice. And if they want to, I guess use us as a model to do quality work, I'm thankful for it.
Yeah, and there's some fluidity in the sport, or at least in what we do with broadcasting, and the streaming has opened up so many doors. I think more doors than if we were to say 10 years ago than we could ever imagine. But you look at stick and ball stuff like the New York Yankees. I remember at one point I wanted to be like a play-by-play broadcaster on the radio for baseball, like for a major league team. There's people that once they get that, when they're 30 years old, that they will, it's like the papacy or something. You're the Pope till you die kind of deal, or a Supreme Court justice, whereas there's been a lot of movement, a lot of moving and shaking, and if you have enough of a dream and a drive, you can accomplish anything.
Yeah, and I mean, I have people ask me all the time, I want to do that. How do I get started? Like, how do I do that? And, frankly, the only advice that I can really give in that sense is don't be too proud to take a job, like, you're not going to go out and you're not going to go to Skagit, or you're not going to go to Houston, or you're not going to go to Knoxville, and you're not going to say, look, I want to be your announcer. And that's just not how that works, right?
Sure. They
want people who have been there before, who have done that. And so don't be afraid to go to, local modified track down the road and say, let me interview Victory Lane people. I know you have an opening at announcer. I know you don't have an infield person. Let me just do the job. Just do the job. Figure out how to create relationships with those drivers. Figure out how to talk to people, behind the microphone. And, eventually those opportunities will come if you work at it.
Well, yeah. And don't dismiss a Sunday afternoon. There's only 10 go-karts and want to be at the Knoxville Nationals, because you got to get through those small steps, so to speak, to get to the bigger steps.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about my story starting at Park Jefferson, north of Sioux City, Iowa, a track that none of your listeners have probably ever heard of. And that's how that opportunity came. So don't be too proud to take a job. There's not a lot of them out there in the upper echelons of the sport. And yeah, there's some turnover every once in a while, but you still really have to be well known to get one of those types of positions.
Yeah. Well, and Park Jeff, for people, I mean, it seems like it was a lifetime ago, but Park Jeff was really the first track to get going during the whole COVID deal with that race you guys had. Ooh, gosh, was it May? It was April. Was it late April or late May? I can't remember.
Yeah, Terry McCarl had a huge part of putting that on. I think it was right at the beginning of May. And it was the first, and not just like, it wasn't the first race that happened. It was the first event of really any capacity that had happened at that point.
Yes.
So, people around here might love to hear this and might hate to hear this, but a lot of the world doesn't realize that they have Terry McCarl to thank for being able to put that kind of stuff together.
Yes, yeah. Well, and I remember it was sprint cars and IMC modifieds, but it was capped at X amount of cars just due to restrictions, right?
Yeah, there was, and I mean, you knew at that point that everyone and their dog that had ever heard of a modified was going to try to find a way to get there. So it was only natural that there was a cap on the entries, and there was a cap on the sprint car entries as well, and there was a cap on attendance as well. But they made it work, and and then we moved on, and I think that they had the outlaw race that was non-points at Knoxville that Tony Bachhoven and John announced remotely.
Yes.
And I think the next one that happened was at Jackson Motorplex.
Yes, yeah, that sounds about right timeline wise. It was just a wild and weird time for sure. And I remember when they announced they were going to have that race, I was like, holy smokes, whoever gets the broadcast rights for this Park Jeff race, they're going to make some coin, because there's some thirsty and hungry race fans.
Yeah, and I don't remember if that was Speed Shift or if the Speed Shift by the Flow acquisition of Speed Shift had already taken place. So I'm not sure which one it was, but yeah, I remember, the Shanleys and Chet and Toby Cruz and Jerry Van Sickle and everybody that was ever involved with Speed Shift was all down there ready to go.
Yeah. It was right about that time when Speed Shift was getting acquired by Flow. But yeah, it was definitely remarkable. And speaking of remarkable, Huset's Speedway. You mentioned Todd Coring purchasing that right around the COVID time. That was a big deal. That was a huge deal because Huset's had just sat dormant for a while, and that's a success story that we normally don't see once a track shutters. Not only, like, let's just say it comes back. There's times where it's not in its former glory, but Huset seems to have the best days ahead of it. Still the best days ahead of it for that facility.
Yeah, and to be frank, there wasn't any hope. I grew up down the hill from Houston Speedway, just past the greenhouse. Like, I could hear Mark Tassler on the PA from my house if I stood in the backyard. That was home for me. Growing up, I went to high school in Brandon, South Dakota. And as a guy who was from there and loved that place, and talked to Sean Neested every week, who had announced there for nearly 25 years now. Nobody thought it was ever going to open again. It was, to the point where when I drove into town, I would take an alternate route through town so that I wouldn't have to drive past the racetrack, because it was just this beacon of, what happens when a greasy, slimy businessman gets his hands in racing. And it was painful for a lot of people. So to this day, I don't think, if the state of Minnesota shuts down Jackson Motorplex for that half a year, I don't think Huset's is bought. I don't think it's running. I really, truly don't believe that. And so it just took this perfect set of circumstances for it to even get acquired by Todd. And everything happened extremely quickly after that. It had an all-star race, in July, I believe it was. Had an outlaw race over, I think it was Labor Day. And it was like, all right, let's go. And the announcement that it was acquired to that first night, and I'll never forget that first night. It was one of my memories in the sport that I'll never forget. Our late model street stocks that are unique to the area, and the All-Star Circuit of Champions there. And for the first green flag of hot laps in front of a sold out crowd, the second largest crowd I can ever remember at Houston, you could hear the cheers of the race fans as though it was a 4-wide salute for a World of Outlaws show.
Sure.
You could hear the cheer over top of the first green flag for street stock hot laps. It was just an atmosphere and a setting that I'll never forget. And I think that speaks to the fact that I think everybody felt the same way that I did, is that this was never going to happen. And it was almost unbelievable to see it unfold before our eyes.
That's super cool and super moving, and no doubt it's one of those you had to be there to experience it. I think some of my friends from the Northwest made a trip. They took a motorhome and they drove there just to be a part of it, because it was a historic moment. Yeah,
it was something that I had never seen before, and the likes of which I can't imagine ever seeing again. That's a good way to put it. It was a historic moment, and it was almost cathartic for those of us that are from the area, right? It was almost just this exhale of, okay, the Sioux Falls area is part of the racing scene again, like we had been since 1953, and it was a magical time, I think.
And it seems like that I watch Huset's every time they're on Dirt Vision, and it seems like the rebuilding, quote unquote rebuilding, of the car counts. I guess you would be the expert at this versus me, but it seems like car counts are healthy, like the local divisions that run there, or is there still some work to be done there?
Well, in terms of the support divisions, the late model street stocks are building their way back up again. They raced primarily at two different racetracks in the area for a long time, I-90 Speedway in Hartford, South Dakota. And you have to remember that was closed for a short time too.
Yeah.
So they were without a home. They put together, kind of band-aided together their own traveling series, which was successful for a few years, just so those cars could survive. And when Houston's reopened, it was a little bit of a gamble to add them to the docket, but they had been a part of the racing scene since the 1960s there at Houston Speedway. So we did, and now those car counts are returning. But again, support divisions, the IMCA Race Saver 305 division is exploding right now around here. We saw it at Jackson Nationals last weekend, 42 and 43 cars.
Yeah.
both nights of Jackson Nationals.
Twin Bees,
The division, it's exploding around here. And that, continues at Houston. We've had Twin Bs on weekly shows at Houston a number of times this year, and a B main, I think, every night. But for the 410s, for the headline, there was a little bit of how many are really left around here. And we saw some guys move up that we didn't anticipate, and that helped. But that first year, we were in the teens a few times, whereas this year it's been upper 20s to 30s most nights. And, I continue to see that growing, especially with the announcement at the beginning of this year that every race would pay a minimum of $5,000 to win. Through the field, the purse increased as well. And that's not a weekly racetrack that's almost an all-star circuit of champions purse, and we do it every single Sunday. And things like that help a lot as well. The investment from the top down, from Todd, from our general manager, Doug Johnson, who I think does more in the sport than anybody really realizes. So much of the credit has to go to him. There's just an investment around here that, frankly, before Houston's closed, I don't think was quite there. And it's really been a fun thing to be a part of.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. And I've said this many, many times. It is a great time to be a sprint car fan. It seems like we're entering this new age, a new glorious age where, not to say that things were terrible before, but we're seeing the money effects, the dollar signs that are counting and getting new teams out there, and some moving and shaking in a good way.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're kind of right in the middle of it. I think we're in kind of a golden age of sprint car racing right now. I've referred to it as a few times. There's investment, and we talked about the investment at Houston. Look, there's investment in Knoxville like we haven't seen in a while. Just they're doing capital project improvements like new elevators and the Brian Clausen Suite Tower, and their purses are going up again. Kind of quietly. National Open doing the same thing out of Williams Grove. Brad and Kyle getting involved at Silver Dollar. That's kind of returning to the crown jewel of the West Coast that it had been for years and years. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing it across the country. Minimum purses going up. ASCS looks like they're going to have a more national schedule again next year. They're building that back up. The All-Stars, High Limit Series, whatever they've got going forward with their partnership moving forward into next year. And that really kind of culminates in when you look at the talent of the World of Outlaw Tour right now. There's only one reason that Donnie Schatz doesn't have the same accolades as Steve Kinzer right now, and that's because towards the end of this career of Donnie Schatz, everybody has gotten so good in a way that we've seen the depth of the field like that never happened before in sprint car racing. Every night at the racetrack, there are at least a dozen people where if they won the feature, you would say, yeah, that makes sense. And I think people forget that through a long time, through the 80s and 90s, there was maybe 4 of those people a year, maybe 6. And now, you look at Shark Racing, you look at Macedo, you look at Gravel, it's Schatz, it's Sweet. Giovanni Selzi as a rookie has been a threat to win. And then you look at guys that aren't outlaw guys. Kyle Larson, I think the best open wheel driver that I've ever seen in my life. Rico Abreu with his resurgent season with Ricky Warner, Brent Marks, Lance DeWeese and what he had going on, Anthony Macri, Tyler Courtney, Aaron Reitzel, Brian Brown. There are so many people that could win an outlaw show and it wouldn't be a surprise. And I don't think that's really ever existed at this type of level in the history of sprint car racing.
Well, and it makes it super entertaining. And that's not to take anything from Steve Kinzer that like his era was dull or anything, but like we're in an era where you don't know what's like this Outlaw Points Championship after Jackson Nationals pretty much kind of flip-flopped to a certain degree. There's thousands of storylines that have developed. Shark Racing, you mentioned. Tanner Holmes going in, doesn't make it out of the B at the high limits race at Houston. It's the first night at Jackson. Finishes P3, and it's just like incredible. Like, I watch a lot of sprint car racing, and pretty much every race that I watch, whether it's 360, Race Saver, 410, there's a good nugget that you can take away that makes that race memorable, which is important.
No, you're absolutely correct. Tanner Holmes has been an interesting case study in the Midwest where I'm at the last couple of weeks. He showed up to Houston, kind of out of nowhere. did all right. Ran a 360 show at Rock Rapids, Iowa. Did pretty darn good. Went to Knoxville and struggled. And then a Shark Racing is involved. And it's like, what? Where did that come from? But if you look at it from the perspective of Shark Racing, look, their next weekend is up in North Dakota at Grand Forks, which is, very similar to some of the bull rings that he would have grown up on out west. Mm-hmm. And their next races after that are out west at those bull rings that he grew up on. And so I think it was a smart hire. And it comes with, a lot of off the racetrack positives as well. And some people see that, as kind of a backhanded compliment. It's absolutely not. He's been able to market himself in a way that, even in this day of age of people forcing themselves through marketing, a way that most people can't and don't. And that's much to his credit. And, he's put in the hard work on the track and off of it to earn himself this opportunity. In the end, it's still going to be up to him on what he does with it, but I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out.
Most definitely. I think both parties, I think, are going to have mutual benefits. Tanner Holmes is going to get the exposure to some tracks and the high level of racing every single night that he's in a car. And Shark Racing is going, no race team, I think, is going to dislike that their driver has a social media following like him, to where he's got long lines of people that just want to come up and shake his hand or take a picture with him.
That's absolutely true. You're not exaggerating on that. At Jackson Nationals, the longest line to shake hands and take picture with a driver was Tanner Holmes. It wasn't Carson Macedo, who won the Jackson Nationals for the second consecutive year. It wasn't four-time and defending champion Brad Sweet. It wasn't, Donnie Schatz, the 10-time champion. It was this kid that everybody was shocked to see in that ride. And, that speaks to the amount of work that he's put into his career.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Well, speaking of careers for you, your son is heavily getting into a go-kart career, correct? And that's gonna be taking a lot of your time.
Yes, yeah, we bought him a go-kart, R-Box class, we call it in this area. It's just a clone motor with a green restrictor plate. And it was largely just, all right, we're going to see if you like this. We're going to see if you can handle it, those types of things. And he did. We've raced 5 or 6 times this year. We're going to race again this coming Saturday. And, all in Hartley, Iowa, at a little racetrack called Plessis Motor Speedway. And he likes it. He's been good at it from the box, from the first night we showed up. It's not too much for him. So that's the plan for me. I've tendered my resignations at Jackson and Houston. My announcing career effectively came to its conclusion that Saturday night, calling Carson Macedo to his win at the Jackson Nationals. And from here on out, for me, it'll be racing 25 to 30 times a year, as much as we can in the upper Midwest. We start late with the snow and we end early with high school football, but that's what life holds for me now is racing with Matthew and coaching his football teams and coaching his baseball teams. And, my daughter is getting into soccer and coaching her teams. And so we're really looking forward to kind of that next stage.
That's awesome. That's really cool because I'm preaching to the choir here. Announcing isn't you just show up at 5:00 and then just start talking. And it's not just the day of the race. It's a week-long process getting all your information correct or organized and working. You spend a lot of time just for the X amount of hours you're going to be on the microphone for a weekend.
Yeah, and that's kind of the side of it that people don't see is there's different types of announcers out there. There's your I guess catchphrase guy, right? Everybody trying to make jokes on the microphone, doing catchphrases, stuff like that. And then there's the people, and I think this is why John Gibson and I have worked together for so long, is because we have a very similar style. There's the people that I guess my thing is stats and information conveyed accurately and efficiently. That's all I'm out here to do. I'm not out here to do anything other than that. And so in order to have stats and information conveyed accurately and efficiently, you have to gather the stats and information. So it's a week-long process, and it's longer than a week-long process for something like the Jackson Nationals. You want to do everything right. That means you have to put in the time and effort to do those things right. And, that equals a lot of time spent in my office in the basement during non-work hours that will no longer be spent, which is, kind of a nice thing for, I guess, the entire family here.
Yeah, I know the feeling there where the kids are like, "Hey, can we go to the park yet or something?" Or when you spend the day with the kids and you're working till 3, 4 a.m. just entering data, crunching numbers and organizing it.
Yeah, and then you couple that with my race pass, and it's all motorsports all the time,
Yes.
and that's pretty much the entire lifestyle that I have. Is that it's racing, and then I get done. I talk about racing all day at work. I get done with that, and I start to do research for announcing, and then I get done with that, and I start to answer after hours calls from clients that need help. And before you know it, you just get burned out on this stuff, man. You really do. I hate to say it that way. I love racing as much as anybody. I love sprint car racing probably more than anybody. But every once in a while, you got to take a step back. You got to find something else. And Jacob Allen has done that, and I admire him for it because it's a very difficult decision to make. And but you have to keep yourself mentally fresh. You really get burned out on this stuff if you don't take care of yourself.
Yeah, you can really get it to where you got a tiger by the tail or a wolf by the ears. Like you love it so much, you don't want to let go, but at the same time, it's like I just need a breather, just like for 5 seconds.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right.
Well, and the My Race Pass thing that'll continue, so you're not completely stepping away from racing and helping others.
Yeah, no, full-time position in my race pass. Myself and Dakota Tennyson, who scores for the IRA sprint cars up in Wisconsin, we direct together the support team at my race pass. So every track series or sanctioning body that exists that uses my race pass, which is about 85% of the circle track market in the United States at this point, we talk to and train and answer questions for and are here to help. That will continue. I'll continue talking to and about racetracks and race car drivers every single day. And I hit the jackpot getting this job. I talked about, with Josh Holt reopening Park Jefferson Speedway with him back in 2014 when he was the general manager. A couple of years ago, the company that I was working for was getting bought out by a Fortune 200 company, basically, out of Arizona. And I said, how bad do they really need an office in Rock Rapids, Iowa? I'm going to get out in front of this before too long. And I made a couple phone calls, and one of them was to Josh, and he said, look, we've been needing a guy that I think aligns with your skill set anyway. So this is the perfect opportunity. It's been great. I think in October now it'll be 3 years here. I absolutely love it. I love working for a group of people like the people that we've got at my race pass. And that no plans to end that relationship at all. If I won the Powerball, I keep working here.
Yeah, and I gotta say this, that when it comes, I've worked closely with the people with MRP, with a different number of people, Chris, Ross, and possibly you. I've had to send, and Devin send some emails to throughout the years, and prompt service, always friendly and courteous, and always willing to help. And if it's something that I need help with to be trained on, we'll make it happen kind of thing, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's a great team, and it's been great to be a part of some record growth actually record growth with the team over the last couple of years. We brought on sanction management, NASCAR sanctioned tracks, both dirt and asphalt across the country this year. That's been a huge learning experience for me because I'm almost never around asphalt racing at all. You think it wouldn't be that different, but there's just cultural differences in the two. But it's been awesome. It's been great. Bringing on purchasing MSR Mafia, Ben Shelton's company, bringing Ben Shelton and Jeremy Peters on board to do what was necessary, I think, for us for a long time, getting our driver experience where it should be kind of up to snuff and matching the rest of our experience as well. Selling a record number of driver sites, Ben and Jeremy, and really, the whole team's involved, but Ben and Jeremy really lead that part of it. And man, the driver websites that we're kicking out over the last year or so have been just really, really cool. I almost get excited every time that there's a release. Every week we're releasing websites, and every time new sites go out, I get excited to look at them just because we've got a graphic design team here that's really second to none. So it's cool to be a part of this from a track and series and sanctioning body perspective, from a driver perspective, and now getting into drag racing as well. We got some drag racing results going in on the app every once in a while. Time slips in the app for drag racing. It's just the growth. It never stops, and it's exciting to be a part of.
Well, that's really cool. I can't wait to see what more growth can be had with MRP, and really happy for you and the whole team that it's going in a good direction.
Yeah, no, we've got big things to come as well. I mean, stay tuned. We'll probably have some more information out there soon on some bigger things to come that I really can't talk about yet. But come PRI time, there's more to come from my race pass.
Well, Austin, it's been great to have a chat with you. I've really loved this discussion. Before I let you go, though, because I know you're a busy guy, anybody that you want to thank that has made everything possible in your life, racing wise, family, friends, or individuals.
Oh man, yeah, I did a big Facebook post on Wednesday last week, kind of announcing my retirement, and went through a list. And there's a lot. Yeah, first and foremost, my wife, Shannon and I have been married for 7 years. I've been doing this for golly, this is my ninth year announcing. So as long as we've known each other, basically, I've been doing this, and it's been part of it's a sacrifice. We talk about the time sacrifice that we make to do this job, but the time sacrifice is felt by those around you, right? And so that's been my wife since basically I've known her. So that's the biggest one. But look, Doug Johnson taking a chance on me. That year, that race at Worthington that I filled in at, and the subsequent year announcing there with Justin Holtoppel, that was a big one for me. Greg Parent was the first one who took me traveling with his series for the first time, GRP Motorsports. So he as well. Mike Gross with the Tri-State Late Models. Obviously Todd and Doug. Sean Neested. I've had the opportunity to work at Knoxville and at Cedar Lake with Tony Bachhoven a few times. He's outstanding to work with. There's a lot out there, man. The drivers, you form relationships with drivers in a big way. I call it the circle of friends, right? We're all out there building our own circle of friends. Some people see a circle of dirt. I see a circle of friends. And there's a lot of drivers out there that are a part of that. The Jody Rosenbooms of the world, Justin Henderson, Brooke Tatnall, Jacob Hughes, Christopher Traum. This year I've gotten to talk to Ayrton Jennison and Chase Randall a bunch. And a lot of the 305 teams, man, Matt Johnson, Bill Johnson, that family, the Bodies, the Allens from up around Arlington. There's a lot of people that have been really, really, really good to me in the last 9 years. And I'll appreciate that more than anything.
Well, I definitely wish you the best of luck in the future, and I hope that your kids' go-kart career goes really successful and leads to some big things. And obviously, wishing you nothing but the best. Austin, it's been great to catch up with you.
No, I appreciate you having me on. Appreciate the time. I know you got some big nights coming in the Northeast here with the Outlaws in the next 2 weeks, so you make sure you enjoy all that.
Well, that is going to do it for this interview. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure and hit the like and subscribe button on whatever platform you found this interview at. It really helps us grow the channel, and we greatly appreciate it. In the meantime, we'll be back with more content and interviews in the future. Be sure and have a great evening or a great rest of your day, whatever time you're listening.